Good afternoon, school. Take a seat. Mr. Anderson. Good afternoon, school. We would just like to say before we start, it is an extreme privilege to have the Mayor of Cape Town here with us. He has taken time out of his very busy schedule to come and answer our questions here. So let's just give him the utmost respect and attention as he answers our questions, and please, when we get to the questioning phase, please remember to be respectful and gentle. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, learners, staff members, and I'm told you refer to yourself as Westfordians. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much to you, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Smith, and to the learners who are responsible for this program for the very kind invitation to join you today. It's a great pleasure as Mayor for me to come and speak at Westerford. I must tell you, it's not the first time that I have been to your school. I've actually been here many times before, because I was once a learner myself at a school called Edgemead High School. And Edgemead, as I'm sure the sportsmen and women in the hall will know, is a regular competitor against Westerford. And in those days, I have no idea, I must be honest, what the most recent results are like, but in those days it was a very close matchup. And I hope that is still the case. But as a result, I've been here quite often, although it has probably been, well, longer than I'd like to admit. Close to more than 15 years since I've been here last, so it's wonderful to be back again. And back in those days when I was at Edgemead, whenever we heard that we were up against Westerford in a sports match, whether it be cricket or rugby, which were my two sports, or in competitive debating or public speaking, which I used to do as well, and I hope that tradition still continues here, we always heard that name with a sense of respect, because this school really has put Cape Town on the map. To operate here in the southern suburbs, surrounded by so many other excellent schools, and to still stand out as a top achiever takes some doing. So, ladies and gentlemen in matric and learners down here, you are very, very privileged, and I hope proud to attend one of Cape Town's very best schools. But your school's reputation also goes beyond just matric results and academics and good sporting achievements. People speak of Westerford as a place that nurtures and delivers both interested and engaged and involved, but also interesting people, young South Africans. A school that values independent thinking and good debate and encourages a diversity of ideas, interests and skills. So the fact that there is no one single typical Westerfordian is a great thing. A country as bright and colourful and diverse as South Africa, with all the challenges that we have as a country, is going to need a future generation that is able to think creatively and approach problems from all new sorts of angles. And it sounds to me, all that I know of your school and all that I continue to learn about it, that is precisely the calibre of young South Africans being produced in this very hall and being sent out into the world. And so I'd like to say to your principal, Mr. Smith, who I know also has some previous connection with Edgemead, which makes him a very good chap indeed, and Mr. Anderson, and all of your teachers, that you are doing a very great job here. Congratulations, thank you for what you are doing, and please do not stop doing what you are doing. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit today about doing something in your life that gives you a sense of meaning and purpose. But there are few more important jobs and places of work in our society today than dedicated, devoted teachers in great schools. And they don't get to hear thank you often enough. So why don't we take a second together to thank your dedicated staff here at Westerford by giving them a big round of applause. South Africa really does need inspirational leaders, thinkers, doers, inventors, debaters, contributors, people who contribute more than they take out of society. And not just South Africa, but Cape Town specifically needs those kind of people. It was suggested to me today that I include in my talk some pointers on how one could become a more involved young South African, and what options might be available to teenagers who want to play a part in building a better South Africa, something that I am very, very passionate about doing. So I could stand here and list all of the excellent volunteer organizations and community projects where one could offer your time, and I have no doubt that many of you already are offering your time in many of those projects. But I want to do something a little bit different, because I believe the best contribution you could make, if you're a smart, thoughtful, concerned, hardworking young citizen, which I know, I do not doubt for a second that every one of you is to start thinking now about how you could best contribute to your country and your community once you finish up here at Westerford. So this is going to be less about how and where to volunteer in your free time now, and more about what I think you should consider as one of your career options after school. In short, let me be quite clear. I would love for very many of you to come and work for the city of Cape Town. And I'm going to tell you why I think this could be one of the best decisions you could ever make. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The public service, really? And local government in particular, the sphere of government that I work in? Government in South Africa has got such a bad rap because it's done badly in so many places. People look at struggling municipalities that offer poor service to their residents, particularly their poorest residents, and they equate this with government or the public service in general. People look at those number of politicians who seem only in politics for themselves and what they can extract from it, and they equate this with government and the public service in general. People look at what is happening in our country, with electricity, with crime, with the deterioration of basic services, and they say that is government, that is the public service in general. I understand all of that, I really do. Substandard government service is so widespread now and so ubiquitous in our country that I don't blame talented young people like yourselves, and one day when you become talented graduates, for not thinking of the public service as a first choice for your career. But let me say this, when it is done right, the public service is undoubtedly one of the most rewarding jobs in all the world. Nowhere else do you get to affect people's lives so profoundly and so directly, and nowhere else is there a bigger felt difference between a job well done and a job poorly done. But there is a conundrum in this. In order to build a public service that is able to change people's lives for the better, or preserve the environment for future generations, or solve complex challenges like electricity supply or public transport, you have to fill that public service with the right kind of people. And to attract the right kind of people, you need to be a certain caliber of organization. You see the challenge. It is the classic chicken and egg. When you get it right, it becomes a cycle of excellence. Good people deliver a great government, begets even better people, a cycle of excellence. But when you start slipping, you lose the ability to attract the best, and you go into a downward spiral. So much of what you see going wrong in our country today comes down to this simple fact. Thankfully, the City of Cape Town is already an organization of excellence, and I have the privilege to work with a team of people who are quite extraordinary. Every day, I get to witness firsthand the impact of their work on the lives of ordinary Cape Townians, and specifically poor Cape Townians, who are more reliant than anyone else on government services. I've been in this job now as Mayor of Cape Town for about a year and 4 months, about 16 months. And I'm still astounded every day by the complexity of the functions performed by the various departments of the city, and also by the true excellence we have in our team. This is no easy task. South Africa is a complicated country with a very troubled past. That past has left scars in our society that will take many generations to heal. Some of these scars are emotional and will only be healed by building trust and truly getting to know one another. But many of the scars are not emotional. They are visible and physical and practical. Scars like the spatial inequality that still haunts all South Africa's towns and cities, Cape Town not excluded. As so-called formerly black and coloured residents were forced into areas that were far away from economic opportunities and often not suitable for dignified living. That scar is still very visible and real. One of our biggest challenges in Cape Town is to overcome this spatial legacy of apartheid, both through affordable housing projects in well-located areas and by improving and expanding and making safer and more affordable public transport available to more people. Another very real remnant of our past is the extreme poverty that affects so many South Africans, and along with this, the very high levels of inequality that exist in our society. We are one of the most unequal societies in the world. You cannot build a sustainable, prosperous country or city on such inequality, and it's a challenge we have to take seriously. The only way to solve this is to find ways to put a lot more people into work. That is the most sustainable, long-term, successful strategy for moving people out of poverty and into opportunity. And to do this, you have to find ways to grow the economy. In other words, you have to create an environment where people feel safe and confident to come and build businesses, start their new ideas, offer new products and services, invest their money, take a risk. This is a massive challenge throughout our country, and Cape Town again is no exception. But we are certainly making progress. This metro, our city, already has by far the lowest unemployment rate in the country, and almost all of the new jobs created in the whole of South Africa in recent months have been here in Cape Town. That doesn't happen by accident, it doesn't happen by chance. It happens because we work hard to make our city business friendly and investor friendly and an attractive place to come and start and run a business. We work hard to show people that Cape Town is the best place to open a factory or a call center or a head office. And we then try to make it as easy as possible for those businesses to run and succeed here. We do that because we want them to employ the hundreds of thousands of Cape Townians who are looking for work. And so we see them as essential partners in our mission of getting people out of poverty. Another very real issue that we have to deal with is the rate at which Cape Town is expanding. Cape Town, in many parts, feels a little bit like this hall, overcrowded. And we've got to look for more places to build more housing at denser rates in more parts of the city to deal with the number of people who want to be here. Just like a successful school attracts more and more learners, and so you have to spill out of your old boundaries onto the stoep there, the veranda. So Cape Town is spilling out of its old boundaries as more and more people want to come to a city that is working. And people move to where they think they'll have the best chance of finding work, the best chance of putting their children into a decent school, the best chance of accessing good healthcare, and the best chance of living a life with better services and better dignity. Over these years, these things have drawn hundreds of thousands of new people to Cape Town in particular, and our city is bursting at the seams. Some predict that within a generation, that means that by the time you grade 8s are my age, Cape Town will have 10 million people living in it. And that is not that far away. I know that you're looking at me thinking he's so old, but I promise you, you will be my age in the beat of an eye. This can either be a problem or it can be an opportunity. And I choose to see it as the latter. It's an opportunity. If we can stay ahead of the curve and expand our services and our infrastructure to keep up with this rate of expansion, if we can make this a city of economic growth and jobs, then a 10 million strong Cape Town will be an incredible place of opportunity, innovation and culture. It could be the New York City of Africa. But within such a rapidly expanding, changing city, you will always find new challenges to solve and new problems to overcome, many of which don't even exist yet. 20 years from now, the way we produce and consume electricity will look completely different to the way we do it today. The types of cars we drive are going to be different. Perhaps many of us won't even drive cars because the city's public transport network will be simpler, more efficient and cheaper to use than owning your own car. We'll discover new ways to build affordable housing. We'll find new innovations to lessen our impact on the planet and save our environment for future generations, and to generate much less waste as a society. We'll most certainly spend a lot of time and energy trying to balance the needs of a growing population with the need to preserve our environment and preserve green spaces for everyone to use in our city. In other words, we're going to have to be resilient and adaptive to a very fast-changing world and a very fast-growing city. And to do all of this, we will still need to employ people who can think in new ways, in new patterns, who can solve problems creatively, and who can apply themselves and all that they've learned to the brand new problems of the world they faced then, not the ones that we face now. And most of them will be young. I am proud to be Cape Town's youngest mayor. And I'm proud that in my team we have some of the youngest professionals working in the city right in the mayor's office. So I'm excited that many more young people in the future will go into the public service, will come and work for the city of Cape Town, and I'm hoping that many of them, at least some of them, are here in front of me today. Research shows us that the attitudes that influences career choices have been shifting over the last few generations. Doing work that has some kind of purpose and a social impact has always been important to people, but never more so, according to the research, than among the youngest cohort of job seekers. The so-called Generation Z, which includes all of you in this hall, by the way, are far more likely, the research tells us, to seek out careers that offer a deeper sense of purpose than, say, our parents or grandparents would have. And I suppose this is partly because you are a more informed generation. Your access to media has opened your eyes to the world and given you knowledge and an understanding of issues that older generations simply did not have when they were your age. What we also know is that the more that you are exposed to the daily challenges and hardships faced by others, the more that you develop a sense of empathy for their situation. And along with this, often comes a sense of duty to do something about it. I know that this is what motivates me. If you want to make a difference in society, whether that's by improving the living conditions of our poorest residents, or by helping homeless people reintegrate back into society, or by protecting rivers, lagoons and beaches, or by finding more efficient ways for people to move around the city, or indeed by imparting knowledge and learning and wisdom onto the next generation of young people by becoming a teacher, you will not find a better way to do all of these things and to have all of these impacts other than by working in the public service. And not just any part of the public service, but as I said, explicitly I'm making a pitch for local government and the City of Cape Town. So I know that many of you sitting here will be thinking of what you want to do after school. You may already have your heart set on other careers. I know that I sure did. When I was in high school at Edgemead, I was pretty good at maths and accounting. I went and studied accounting at the University of Cape Town, and then shortly thereafter changed to a BCom, and thought for the longest time that I would probably end up in banking or in finance or in economics or something like that. Until politics found me, or I found politics, and found what I believe is a true sense of purpose. So I know that some of you are thinking about and may already have your heart set on what you want to do. Some of you are less than a year away, ladies and gentlemen on the balcony, from embarking on that journey. And whatever it is that you choose, I really do wish you a very rewarding career and a very fulfilling life. I know, speaking personally, that if you do something that gives you a sense of purpose, that gives you a sense that you are doing something in service of something more important than yourself, that gives you a sense that you are making a contribution, a net contribution to society, giving more than you are taking, that you will find a great sense of meaning and happiness in your life, and you will feel fulfilled. That is not only found in the public service, but for many of you, you may still be thinking about what life will hold, and the door of thought and decision is still wide open. And while the world and our country will always need more doctors and engineers and scientists and journalists and economists and farmers and marketers and business owners and designers and everything else, 100 or 1,000 other professions, all of which may give you just as great a sense of purpose and meaning as the public service, I say to you today that we will also need some very bright, very driven, very intelligent, very creative individuals to help make Cape Town the best city in the world, especially for those for whom opportunity is still beyond arm's reach. So I'm not asking you to commit here and now. I'm asking you to keep it in the back of your mind, to keep the door open to the public service, because when in the public service, when done right, is one of the very best ways to spend your working day, one of the very best ways to make a difference in society. It is the reason I love being the Mayor of Cape Town, the reason I love the public service, and I invite you to join me there too. Thank you so much for having me at Westerville.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We are now going to settle these. We're now going to start a question and answer time, going through just some of the 60-odd questions we had for you. And I'm going to hand over to Tim, quiet please, to Tim and to Lockie.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, our first question is, what are your efforts to address gender-based violence? We hear many reports, especially coming from areas such as the Claremont Post Office where the murder of Uyinene took place a while back, and yet not much seems to be happening. What are your plans to help eradicate gender-based violence, specifically in the Western Cape? How can the stats get to the point where they are virtually non-existent?
Working, thank you. So, gender-based violence is notoriously one of the most difficult kinds of crimes to police, because most of it happens inside the home, behind the privacy of closed doors. Gender-based violence is overwhelmingly committed by partners and people who are so-called or may have been thought of as loved ones. So it's a notoriously difficult crime to police, because it's very difficult for police forces, police officers to get behind those closed doors and see what is happening in the privacy of people's homes. In Cape Town, we have a small police force called the Metro Police and Law Enforcement, and they are extremely thinly stretched, dealing with gangsterism on the Cape Flats, an enormous epidemic of drug abuse, and many other crimes besides. The South African Police Service is about 10 times the size of the Metro Police in Cape Town, and they have primary responsibility for dealing with those other categories of crimes. But because we are increasingly having to step into the gap for the SAPS, as that organization is under tremendous pressure, we increasingly find ourselves dealing with a great deal of gender-based violence. When our most frequent interaction with gender-based violence is when usually a woman victim calls the City of Cape Town Law Enforcement Emergency Line, Metro Police Emergency Line, and reports some kind of abuse. And we respond immediately to that and follow it up as best as we can. But one of the core problems that you will find in the gender-based violence statistics is how poorly enforced protection orders are in South Africa. Many women who are in abusive relationships will actually go through the effort of getting a protection order, and that protection order is never enforced by the SAPS, or very rarely is it enforced by the SAPS. And so you have the kind of double tragedy where someone who is a fatal victim of gender-based violence, all of the signs were there, went through the efforts of getting a protection order, and the system failed to protect that person. So we are stepping into the gap that is left by an SAPS that is increasingly fragile and cracking at a national level. But we are doing so with a resource envelope 1/10 of the size. And so it's incredibly difficult to fill that gap entirely, but doing the best we can.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Next question is, what is Cape Town doing in terms of combating the electricity crisis in our city, specifically for the poor and the vulnerable?
Okay, so we have a 36-month plan to stop load shedding in Cape Town by buying additional electricity from so-called independent power producers. That's probably a word you've heard often in South Africa, called IPPs, independent power producers. And essentially it's slowly dismantling the monopoly that Eskom has had on electricity generation and sale in South Africa for many decades, for 100 years, and decentralizing that electricity provision to cities and provinces. And so we are going ahead and buying our own power. We will buy about 700 megawatts of additional power in Cape Town, which will be enough to stop load shedding. But there is no overnight solution, I'm afraid, because those projects have to be constructed. Most of them are massive solar projects. They have to be connected to the grid. They have to be contracted and financed and so on. So there is a very steady time schedule, which I think we are on track to do over the next 36 months. And I do think that we will be the first major city in the country to stop load shedding. There might be some smaller places who were able to do it before, but that's because they need much less energy. But Cape Town is a massive city. Our total energy use is about 2,500 megawatts every day. And so it is our intention first and foremost to fill that load shedding gap with about 700 megawatts.
What types of measures are in place to have an inclusive council, regardless of race, gender, and sexual orientation?
So the council is elected democratically. So any person who is a South African citizen over the age of 18 may be elected to council. And there may be some of you who have ambitions to stand one day for council, and I encourage you to do so. So it really is in the hands of the voters who gets elected to council. Every person from every community, from across the city, from every religion, faith background, cultural background, is perfectly entitled to stand for election, to make their case to the voters, and to earn the voters' confidence or not, as the case may be. That is how a democracy works, and it is not a perfect system, but it is the best system that we have, and that is how the council in Cape Town is elected.
How is the city addressing the issue of unplaced school pupils in Cape Town?
So our constitution in South Africa divides the responsibility for certain public services up between the spheres of government. There are certain things that the national government is solely responsible for. There are certain things that the provincial government are solely responsible for, and then there's certain things that the city government is solely responsible for. So for example, in my earlier question, perhaps I should have made that clear there, the city does not control the SAPS at all. We have our own much smaller police force that I mentioned earlier, the Metro Police and the law enforcement, but the SAPS are controlled entirely by the national state. So similarly, the Department of Education is controlled entirely at a provincial government level. The city has got no responsibility or role whatsoever in public education. We do have some land that we allow the Western Cape Education Department to build some schools on. We are currently helping them try to build as many schools as possible by providing that land to them, by providing services to them for free, by helping speed up their building plan, approval process and so on. Because we obviously want many more kids to get into good Western Cape schools, learners, not kids, to get into good Western Cape schools, particularly in the city. And so we are helping as best as we can, but really from a land and service orientation, not from building the schools themselves, which is the responsibility of the Western Cape Education Department.
Even nearly 30 years post-apartheid, there is still a highly noticeable wealth gap in the city, and there is a severe lack of service delivery in areas that, during that era, were classified as non-white. Does the municipality plan on resolving this issue? If so, how do they plan on doing it? And approximately, how long will it take?
So, there's two questions there and I'd like to answer them both. The first is the inequality in wealth. The biggest inhibitor to opportunity and wealth accumulation in South Africa, not just in Cape Town, in every part of our country, is poverty and unemployment. When you are locked in poverty, you can't make use of the opportunities that society offers because you are just trying to get through each day. It's about survival, not expanding opportunity and making use of opportunity. So addressing poverty is the most important, I think, moral issue of our generation, of our time, and it is the overriding goal and purpose of our government in Cape Town. The most sustainable and successful way to address poverty is to grow the economy to get people into work. By creating an environment where more jobs exist, more people can access those jobs and get into work and out of poverty. And that, I think, I covered in my remarks, how we are doing that, to make this the best place to start a business, to run a business, to come and invest, to build a factory in the country and in the continent, will create many more jobs and get many more people out of poverty. And as I said, it's not a mistake or by chance that 72% of all net jobs created in the whole of South Africa were created in Cape Town over the last quarter. That does not happen by mistake. That happens because you have a government committed to growing the economy and getting people out of poverty and into work. Now, to the second part of the question, I would like to respectfully disagree with the premise of the question, because Cape Town delivers the very highest level of free basic services to poorer residents in the whole of South Africa. Of course, there are many parts of the city where those services need to be expanded further, and there are many people coming to our city all of the time, and that puts us always on the back foot in having to roll out new services to new parts of the city all of the time. But there is, I can say with absolute 100% certainty, that there is no other place in the whole of South Africa that offers a greater degree of free basic services to its poorest residents than in the city of Cape Town.
So this next question might seem a little bit out of place, but it was put here. How do you cope with the demands of such a busy job? Are you able to carve out so-called me time? And if so, what kind of things do you do?
No, I think that's a very good question because it is a stressful job and you have to have an opportunity to clear your head and to think properly about what you are trying to achieve and how you are doing in getting there. For me, I have a young daughter and a young family, I suppose, and it's very important for me personally that I carve out enough time to spend with my family and particularly my young daughter, because I don't want to, at the end of this job, look back and say, well, I've done a great job as mayor, but I've been an absent parent. So that is my greatest anxiety, and I really never want that to be the case. So that's what my most important thing that I have to carve out time for. And then the thing that I like to do to relax is to read. I have always been a great reader from high school already, and I really encourage everyone here. Reading is an essential life skill, and is so enjoyable. It transports you to other worlds and just opens up your mind in the most wonderful way. So I still am a very avid reader, and the thing that relaxes me best is to pick up a great novel or the newest, greatest biography and to be absorbed in that for a few hours. I don't unfortunately get a great deal of time to do that, but even if I do it for 10 minutes at the end of the day before I go to sleep, I feel much more relaxed.
The Leesbeek River filtering into the Black River is terribly polluted. Why is this, and what is the city doing about this problem?
It's not just the Leesbeek River, it's many rivers around the city. It's our massive flays, the Zandvlei, the Ridge Vlei, the Sickle Vlei, the Milnerton Lagoon. Cape Town is a rapidly urbanizing city in a developing world country. It deals with enormous informality. It deals with the enormous pressure of urbanization. And there is an enormous amount of abuse of our sewer system, of our stormwater system, a huge amount of illegal dumping and littering. And most of that finds its way eventually into rivers and eventually into the ocean. With the result that our beautiful rivers are very polluted. We have a dedicated program in the mayor's office, in my office, to try to clean up our rivers and our flays and our public open water areas, running right as a priority from the mayor's office with a huge dedication of funds and experts to help us do that. I hope that you have also seen that we are very passionate about cleaning up litter and stopping illegal dumping and waste in our city. We have been running that campaign for all of the last year. Nearly every week, without exception, we are out cleaning up in a different part of the city, many times including in rivers and flays, and trying to educate the public that no one should ever litter, no one should ever dump illegally, that all of us can show respect and care for our city and put our litter and rubbish in the appropriate place rather than in the stormwater drains or in the rivers. So we are trying over time to clean those places up. It will take a very long time given how much work we have to do in public education, but it would be great to see, I'm sure that Westerford does cleanups as well, but it would be great to come and join you for a cleanup and to see more and more schools helping in that public education drive to get the message out there that we can all show a greater degree of respect for our natural environment.
What is the scope for small businesses and individuals to produce energy and sell it back to the grid?
That's a great question. I have some budding entrepreneurs in the audience. We have a really fantastic policy change in the city. This is the first place on the African continent to introduce a policy like this, where we will buy power from your home, if you have a solar system at home, from your small business, from your big business, from your school even, Mr. Anderson. that if you have a solar system and you're prepared to sell back to the city, we will buy that power from you and we will pay you for that power. So you can actually earn money as a small-scale embedded generator, we call it. A small-scale power producer, essentially. And that applies to everyone across our city. It is live now, and there is no limit to what you can, how much power you can sell back to the city. That is an innovative proposal, just in Cape Town, nowhere else in South Africa or on the continent. So it's a big step in the right direction.
Our next question is, what changes have you brought to Cape Town since becoming mayor?
Oh wow. So the thing that I've been probably the thing I'm most obsessed about, of course, is energy, because I think energy and load shedding is killing our economy. And it goes to all of the other questions you've asked about poverty and unemployment and inequality. It makes it much harder to address those things when you have an economy that is slowly shrinking instead of growing because of this paucity of electricity. So that has been an obsession of mine, and we have started all of the policy changes in solar power, all of the procurement of new electricity generation, all happened in the last year. That's on energy. I've been very passionate and perhaps some may say obsessed about cleaning up, to your earlier question about the rivers. We do that every week, and we are starting a massive public education drive on litter and dumping and helping to put a stop to that. That's something that existed years ago in the city, more than a decade ago, but has fallen by the wayside, and we are reviving it with much more volume. But perhaps the thing that I have become most interested in is on the delivery of basic infrastructure and basic the building blocks, the fundamental underpinnings that make a city work. Things like sewer pipes and stormwater drains and roads and wastewater treatment works and water treatment facilities. These are things that you and I hardly ever talk about in our families and homes, but we assume that it will just be there when we switch on the tap or when we pull out of the driveway. But that takes massive investment. And if we want to talk about improving the lives of our poorest residents and extending better services, the way to do that is by building a lot of infrastructure. So I've spent a lot of time the last year accelerating our infrastructure investment massively over the next few years, putting in place the budgets, the skills, the engineers. Those of you thinking about going into engineering, a great contribution you can make as an infrastructure engineer in Cape Town over the years ahead. So those are just some of the things that have excited me the last year.
Okay, we've got 7 or 8 minutes left. What we're going to do now, there are more questions that Nofu and Tim could pose, but we're going to give a chance to you. If anyone would like to ask a question, perhaps you've been itching to hear something right. The trick, we don't have a mic up there, so you're going to have to speak really loudly, directly behind the camera. Let's go.
So I'd like to know, what are your plans to attract, your specific plans to attract and retain talent to work for the city? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We do have some great bursary programs, particularly in the engineering fields, in the data science field, software development fields. We have some wonderful bursary programs. So particularly for you, as a matriculant, if you are still looking for funding for varsity next year, please go and have a look on our website at our bursary programs if you are intending to study one of those specialized fields. But I think that we could expand it even further. I would love to get more water engineers in particular working for the city, because I think so much of the city's future is going to be about securing water supply. And you can feel it on a day like this. So I'm sure that we could expand our bursary programs even more. And then I think, so that's about attracting talent. We also just want people to really feel proud of the city of Cape Town. And I think all of what we are doing, all of what I've spoken about, helps to add to the sense of prestige of working at a place like the city of Cape Town. That it's not like, you know, I don't know, going to work at ESCOM. That must be a tough place to attract talent at the moment. With due respect to anyone's parents who work for ESCOM, it must be a tough place to attract talent right now because it's just not working. So when you have a place that is working, that is doing good things, that is improving lives around it, more and more people will be attracted to it.
Okay, we're going to go hand right here in the middle, and then against the wall, and then to the gallery, and that might be all we have time for, I'm afraid. Right, so right there in the middle.
Sorry, I can't see who's speaking. Oh yes, there we go.
Speak very loudly.
In regards to your answer to the first question about gender-based violence, can you be more specific on the actual plan to like listen and like?
Okay, so am I right in saying you're wanting specifics about actual plans to deal with gender-based violence, correct?
So, ma'am, I just want to repeat the point. Crime prevention and crime fighting in South Africa is primarily the responsibility of the South African Police Service, the SAPS, which sits at the national level. It's managed from Pretoria, from Tshwane. We've got no influence whatsoever over the allocation of resources, how they distribute those resources. It's a source of great frustration to us. We have a very small police force in Cape Town called the Metro Police and Law Enforcement. And they have very diverse responsibilities, mainly dealing with what we call street crime. That is muggings, snatch and grabs, hijackings, illegal, crime that is taking place on the street, essentially. It's very, very difficult for them with those limited resources to have any sustained program to deal with the true source of gender-based violence, which, as I said earlier, takes place mainly inside the home. So we deal with it mainly at a symptomatic level after it has already happened, when usually, not in all cases, but usually, a woman who is a victim calls the City of Cape Town's emergency call center and asks for help. And then we always automatically and immediately respond. But of course we accept that that is symptomatic, that is not treating the underlying cause and addressing the perpetrators before they get to actually commit the crime. And in that regard, again, I want to stress to you, the most important thing that we could do in South Africa to reduce violence, gender-based violence, is to properly enforce protection orders. Because many, many women who experience abuse do go through the effort and personal risk of getting a protection order, only to have that order fail to be enforced by the SAPS. It is not enough of a high priority for the SAPS, and often with tragic consequences. So it is not that we have the resources or the mandate or the constitutional responsibility to address that head on, but absolutely I think from a symptomatic perspective we probably do so more successfully even than the SAPS, simply because you will know even in your own lives very, very few people in South Africa will ever call 10111 these days. You will be very lucky to get an answer at all, and if you do get an answer, you will be very lucky to get any assistance. So 10111 is very sadly, and I take no joy in saying this, 10111 is basically a defunct emergency helpline. Whereas ours, if there is any woman in a position of danger or need, you should please immediately call the law enforcement emergency call line, because your phone call will be answered within seconds, and you will have the assistance that you need within minutes. And the number, if you are interested, is 021 480 7700.
Okay, don't worry, we'll get that into our
Save that in your phones, please, if you're ever in a
Right. We've got time. Apologies over there. That hand at the top was second. So Hannah, if you'll ask your question very quickly, and then we'll wrap it up.
How does the allocation of funding become private organizations focused
Private organizations focused
on
on
city development?
city development. If you've got time to answer both, if you
Okay.
want to answer just one.
So, are you asking how is the allocation of resources from national government to us or inside the city? Okay. So, we derive our resources from four main sources. We get an allocation of resources from the national state. We tax residents in the city based on property values, called property rates, and then we charge for our services, mainly electricity and water. Those are the four main sources of the city's revenue. We then have a series of infrastructure projects, be they new roads, new sewers, new water projects, new electricity projects, which are mainly determined by engineers. They say that there is this community that needs these roads, or that there is this new wastewater treatment works that we need to build if we want to have the necessary capacity to service our city. And then we balance those against the needs for new housing projects, very, very expensive, against the needs for recreation facilities, for example, parks, swimming pools, sports fields. Those are things that we don't charge for, or don't charge much for, but we still have to fund from that central pot. We deliver things like clinics, 103 clinics around the city that do a great job providing free healthcare in poorest communities. So there's a huge number of demands on our resources, and it's a very difficult balancing act to make sure that they are all properly funded, that they have what they need, and that you are still funding what the engineers say that they need, which is that essential infrastructure. Then, I'm not sure I understand your question. Private organizations that support the development of the city, do you mean when they're building new buildings and so on?
I mean, the economic private organizations, for example, in housing, there's buzzer, which is outdoor and connected to one shop, and that's all like community based. But how is the city supporting that?
Okay. So that sounds like a specific example. We don't fund private organizations. The funding that we raise in the city is for our own projects. But there's many ways in which we help non-profit organizations, whether it be from using our venues in communities or helping them to raise money with events and so on. Helping them to, sometimes we give discounts to them for water and electricity if they are doing good work and make a good case for that. So we try our best to help particularly non-profits, but certainly if there is a profit-making enterprise, a business, we are not allowed to legally help a business to make, essentially to make more money, because then you can imagine if we were showing favoritism to any one particular organization that was turning a profit, every other organization would say, well, what about us? And that wouldn't be legal.
Okay, we need to wrap there. Doctor, unfortunately, I need to ask you if you'll say the last word in thanking the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, on behalf of the Westerford community, we just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to come to our school and to explain what your responsibilities are and to ask the burning questions that we had as a school. We have a small token of our appreciation and we hope that you will come back soon.